Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2026 U.S. Open initial research show. It was another very poor showing for yours truly at the RBC Canadian Open, but I hope you had all of the success this past week. Wagered Bud Colley outright, played all of the Bud Colley, played a bunch of Matt Fitzpatrick, anything and everything for the RBC Canadian Open. I hope you had a lot of your success or a lot of success this past week. And if you weren't playing the RBC Canadian, were you successful in any other endeavor? Maybe wagering the NBA Finals, NHL Finals? Have you been doing much with the World Cup? So would love to hear from you all in chat this evening. I'm going to be very upfront and honest. It has been a horrendous weekend for me. I have not had internet for the past 3 or so days. So I am quite far behind in my preparation. We're going to do what we can tonight, and I'm going to try and get caught up tomorrow. But that's not going to stop us from taking our first look at Shinnecock Hills and the 2026 U.S. Open. So let's get right into it, shall we? All statistics provided tonight and moving forward are from both the Rabbit Hole over BetSperts and Fantasy National. The Rabbit Hole is acquiring or merging with Fantasy National, so I'm in the process myself of migrating all of my files and my data to the Rabbit Hole formatting. Very slow process, especially when I don't have internet, but that's beyond the point. Make sure you are subscribed to the Rabbit Hole. It has everything you need week in and week out for the PGA Tour. Has the lineup optimizer, tournament simulator. They have started to incorporate a lot of Fantasy National functionalities and things that Fantasy National had over there at their site. They've brought that over to the Rabbit Hole, so they are constantly upgrading the Rabbit Hole. You really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to them. Make sure you are doing that. In the description of the video, there are links to all the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally on Mondays I post research regarding the tournament of the week and course info, patterns of previous winners. I've put that on hold, considering I am trying to migrate my files, to the Rabbit Hole. But when that resumes, if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see the players I've wagered with my own money, the players I'm using most often in my lineups, give me a follow over at X. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Highly recommended. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. He is traveling this week. I believe he is taking a family vacation, so good for him. Is taking the week off, but he will return next week. Has everything throughout the week in his own version, if you will, recent form, course history, spreadsheets. So you really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to his article. Make sure you're doing that. Follow him over on social media. Show him some support as well. Lastly, for this intro, we are live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you. Like I said, how was your RBC Canadian Open? How was your weekend in general? And then moving forward, do you think Shinnecock Hills is going to play the same as it did in 2018, where the infamous Phil Mickelson putt happened? Who is your favorite heading into the week? What do you want to see tonight in terms of research? So put your thoughts and opinions in the chat. Would be more than happy to hear from you. If you're not able to catch a show live, put your thoughts and opinions into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's do our initial research for the 2026 U.S. Open. We're going to start, as we always do, on a Sunday night over at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. Sorry, trying to get everything situated here. And I will tell you that normally we start at the GCSAA Tournament Fact Sheet. There is not one out yet. As you can see, I went ahead and reloaded the page. Still nothing there. Good evening, Moss. Good evening, Trip. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. 4 days of prep to win this Millie. Well, I'm going to tell you what, Moss, I appreciate the confidence every week. After the month that I've had, you might want to just do the opposite of what I say. That might be your winning strategy. It has not been a good month for me. And this weekend in particular was very, very frustrating. I played quite a bit of Bud Colley, so that saved my week, if you want to call it that. Was nowhere near Wyndham Clark, or at least he was my fade. I didn't play much Matt Fitzpatrick. Things just didn't go my way. Didn't get a lot right either. Alex Noren, my favorite play of the week, played him a bunch, was terrible. I played quite a bit of Michael Brennan. He didn't make the cut. Austin Eckroat shoots about 11 billion on Saturday, takes himself out of the tournament, who I had a lot of. So just not a great week for yours truly. And on top of all that, sorry, I'm gonna center this camera. It's bugging me just a little bit. And on top of all that, I didn't have internet for 3 or 4 days. So it was just kind of, it was all around just a terrible week and weekend. So I mentioned it in the intro, but I'll tell you all now, as you're coming into the show, I am pretty far behind in my research, just due to the fact that my internet service provider is just awesome. No sarcasm needed there. But anyway, we're back up and running. We're going to do what we can tonight, and I'm going to try and get caught up quite a bit tomorrow. But thanks for jumping to chat, Moss. And then Trip, hoping numbers drift a bit more, but I'm thinking Bryson, Siwoo, Goddard, P. Reed, and Wacko. I'm going to be honest, like Joaquin Niemann, I just can't bet. Considering his number is generally fairly low. Now, granted, I haven't seen what the odds are yet. As I just alluded to, I haven't had internet for 3 or 4 days. Just a lot of crap been going on. But anyway, Joaquin Niemann is not usually somebody that I tend to look to wager. Bryson, in theory, this would be a really good fit for him, and this is the major championship that I most target him. I do worry about his form, though. I mean, he was playing very well coming into the PGA and missed the cut. Missed the cut at the Masters. So I do have my concerns there. Siwoo seems to make a lot of sense, especially with how well he's played. Patrick Reed played well here in 2018. So, a little bit of agreement, a little bit of disagreement there, Trip. That's the beauty of this. We're gonna see if we can't find some gems, if you will, through the research this week. Good to see you this evening. Much appreciated for jumping into chat. 100 on Wacko still. It's just not a guy that I'm interested in wagering, especially since his major performance has generally not been the greatest. Been a little bit disappointing for all the talent that he has. 35 on Bryson. I think that's a little bit too low for my liking, but that's where I'm at. So anyway, starting with the tournament fact sheet, which we can't do. It's not out yet. Hopefully we get the tournament fact sheet tomorrow. So let's go ahead and jump over to the rabbit hole and BetSperts Golf and take a look at the field for the 2026 U.S. Open at famed Shinnecock Hills. Again, the third major of the year. Anybody who's anybody is here. Scotty, Rory, Cam Young, Ludwig, Siwoo, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander, Chris Goddard, Tommy. Anybody and everybody is here this week. I mean, even before we go into some specifics about Shinnecock, it's a U.S. Open. I think it's safe to say majority of us understand that this is going to be extremely difficult. What was the winning score when Brooks was here? Was it +1? Yeah, +1 winning score. We all remember how crazy the course got on that Saturday. The infamous image of Phil Mickelson hitting a putt that was still moving and all of that. So, in rounds that have been difficult and very difficult, you know what? In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and filter what I do normally, or the way I like to do it here at the Rabbit Hole. These major championship venues, difficult and very difficult, long and very long courses. You see how many rounds we have. John Rahm, one of the fewest, or Hatton, one of the fewest because of being on live, but you have Scotty and Rory with 40-something rounds, McNeely and English and Bradley. So just looking at these major championship venues, not looking at majors specifically, but these courses that are set up like major championship venues. Like if we come into Scotty's profile here, we take a look like the Memorial, definitely a major championship style venue. PGA Championship, Masters, BMW from last year, the Open. So you do have your majors in here, but you also have things like the Memorial, things like the Arnold Palmer, Torrey Pines and the Genesis from 2025 when it was moved. So things of that nature, these major championship venues. Good evening, Pre. Thanks for jumping to chat. Much appreciated. Thoughts on Sepp and Morikawa. Morikawa played well in Toronto, so that gives me a little bit more confidence coming into Shinnecock this week. But we've seen that he has dealt with this nagging back injury for a little while. And he hasn't been the best. Like, this is the first time we've seen him since the PGA. He wasn't particularly strong at the PGA. Now, Doral was really bad because he just vomited all over himself putting. Like, he just lost everything putting. Is that his worst putting week? Sadly, not even close to it, but you get the drift. Or you get the gist. It was a horrible putting week that's just not sustainable even in the bad way. I want to like the fit here for Colin, but anytime a player is dealing with injuries, and that's why I was off of Hovland and Morikawa this past week at the RBC Canadian, and both of them played extremely well, which also contributed to me having a terrible week, admittedly. I'm gun shy. I'm shy about it, is how I'll phrase that. Sepp, Sepp's disappointed me lately. He really has. And you see like this performance on long, difficult, major championship style venues. He hasn't been all that great. Middle of the pack there. In terms of very long, very difficult courses. I would be much more aching to want to go to Colin, even with the scare of the back, than I would be with Sepp at the moment. Particularly because I was pretty high on him at the PGA. Didn't play particularly. Actually, you know what? To be fair to Sepp, he actually hit his irons okay. He just lost it all on those greens. Memorial was fine, but Sepp losing 3 straight in putting, when putting is generally, he's not amazing, but he's supposed to be decent. I don't know. That's concerning. That's troubling. But good questions, Pre. Appreciate it. Like I said, I apologize if I'm a little bit slow on the answer tonight. I haven't had internet for 3 days, so I'm trying to play catch up. I just got it back, late this afternoon, playing a whole lot of catch up. But thanks for the questions. Make sure you keep them coming into chat. We'll cover as much as we can this evening. Absolutely. Like I said, I'll give you my honest assessment, and I will never shy away from telling you when I was wrong. And by gosh, I was extremely wrong at the RBC Canadian. So, that's what I hope some of the appeal for me is that you're going to get an honest answer from me, and I'll own it when I'm wrong. But anyway, as we come back and take a look at the performance of these players in the U.S. Open, in these major championship venues, no surprise here. Scotty 1, Rory 2, Tommy 3rd, Tyrrell Hatton, Sam Burns, Matt McNeely, John Rahm, Harris English, Russell Henley, and the aforementioned Patrick Reed from Tripp earlier, sitting 10th in terms of total performance in long and difficult courses. So with that, let me clear the filters here. Hopefully that keeps the time frame. Let's take a look at what the rabbit hole has to say about Shinnecock, and then we'll do kind of a quick hole-by-hole preview, if you will, of Shinnecock Hills through Pro Visualizer. So, the rabbit hole, Shinnecock Hills, again, we saw this in 2004, but we don't have much of that data at all. 2018 is when golf analytics really started to take off. So, Brooks Koepka's win. Shinnecock in Southampton, New York. This is way out on Long Island proper. Par 70 at almost 7,450 yards, 7,440 to be exact. This is going to play very long because it is a par 70. You have a couple, they don't even have the scorecard in here. Fortunately, I do have the scorecard, and I don't have it up, of course, so let me bring that up very quickly, and I'll have it up off to the side here. And I'll show you this here after a little bit. But you have one extremely long par 3 at over 250 yards on the scorecard. The 2 par 5s are essentially 600 yards. And you've got several long par 4s. So we'll get into the scorecard proper here in a moment. But the rest of what the rabbit hole has to say about Shinnecock, of course, very long. It was very difficult in 2018 when you have a +1 winner. That should be no surprise. This is originally a William Flynn design, most recently renovated by Core and Crenshaw. I wish I could give you the exact year. That is why I like to look at the GCSA tournament fact sheet. Unfortunately, we don't have that to start the week. Hopefully, we'll be able to start the show tomorrow with that. 160 bunkers throughout Shinnecock Hills. This is an American links style course. Very little trees, very, very exposed. You've got greens that are perched up on hills and knobs. You're going to drive into valleys. This is as much of a links course in America as you can get. A whole lot of bunkers, and let me tell you, these bunkers are deep. Whether you're close to the green or you're in a fairway bunker, these bunkers are deep. There is only one water danger hole truly on the course. It's on the back 9 somewhere. We'll be able to see that when we go through Pro Visualizer. But very little water danger. Just very tall fescue everywhere throughout the course. The course plays at sea level, so you're not even getting a whole lot of carry like you would in places like Vegas or, perhaps Phoenix, some of these higher altitude places. This is going to be true yardage at Shinnecock Hills playing at sea level. The greens, I know you don't see that. Oh, yeah, you do right there. So 7,500 square foot on average. These are extremely large greens. The average green size on the PGA Tour is about 6,000 square feet. Technically, it's a little lower. I just like rounding to nice whole numbers. But these are extremely large greens. Not necessarily Oakmont size, but some of them will be somewhat comparable to Oakmont from last year. And these greens are extremely tough. Extremely tough to putt. Ridges, valleys, knobs, plateaus, runoffs. They aren't going to play, the true green won't play 7,500 square feet, but that's the green surface. There's steep runoffs on a lot of these holes that are going to bring the ball back some 20, 30 yards and make for very difficult pitching and chipping. Very difficult to putt around here, very difficult around the green. So extremely large bent POA greens. We just saw this last week at TBC Toronto, this bent POA-ANA combination. And this is not the same type of POA-ANA that you would see at Torrey Pines, at Pebble Beach. That's California POA. This is much different. We are in the Northeast, so this is more Northeast style grass. You'll see this at TBC Toronto like we just saw last week. You'll see it at TBC River Highlands at the Travelers. You see this in Detroit for the 3M. A lot of northern and northeast golf is played on Benton POA. Stimp meter says 12. I'm going to tell you right now that's a conservative estimate, especially when the course got really baked out like it did in 2018. Those greens were running 14, 15 on the Stimp. Very fast greens, very firm. The fairway is a mix of some kind of agronomy. Again, with no GCSA tournament fact sheet, it's hard to say. Rough is fescue and kept very long, 5 inches long throughout the course. If you're missing the fairway, it is very hard to play out of the rough here. And we'll see some of those statistics a little bit later tonight. But despite the length of the course, you actually don't hit driver on every single par 4. You really don't. You've got 2 par 4s that are under 400 yards that, generally speaking, you're going to be a little bit more prudent and take fairway metal or even iron off the tee to put yourself in the right position to attack the green. You've got a couple of shorter par 4s as well. 415 I'm seeing. 440 might be the next. So you don't hit a driver off every single par 4, which also contributes to the fact that this will be a very long course, especially when you have the sheer amount of yardage that is at the course and you're not hitting driver. So mixed club type off the tee. And the gain strokes around Shinnecock Hills, at least in 2018, it was kind of average. So it doesn't really favor one particular style of golfer. It doesn't favor the bombers, despite what you might think in terms of length. Like, very quickly, if we just go to 2018 and Brooks's win, yeah, Brooks can hit it quite a long way, but he really didn't overpower the course. Tommy's not a bomber. I mean, he's got plenty of distance, but he's not a bomber. But DJ is. Patrick Reed certainly isn't. Tony Finau probably was at this point in his career. Terrell Hatton's not. Berger's definitely not. Xander doesn't get enough credit for how far he moves it. So, you know, you don't have to have distance to win here. You don't. Like, look at just the varying types of players that you see on this leaderboard. What you will have to do is hit your irons extremely well. Look at all of the positive in terms of iron play that week. I mean, the first player that is negative in terms of iron play sits all the way down outside the top 20 in a T25. That's the first player that's negative in irons. This is going to be a ball striker's paradise. And in fact, okay, so you had one player, Dylan Meyer, who finished 20th because he lost quite a bit off the tee and still decent approach, but he was negative in terms of ball striking. Again, this is going to be a ball striker's course. I know I seem to say that a lot. Really, really emphasized here at Shinnecock, especially since, look at Brooks. Now, Brooks put the ever-living daylights out, sure, but he wasn't very good around the green. I mean, he lost a half a shot around the green per day and still wins. Tommy was not great around the green. DJ was fantastic. But, like, even Patrick Reed wasn't otherworldly. Stinson wasn't great. Berger's not a great around the green player. Still finished in the top 10 despite that, because he was putting it well. He hit his irons amazing. So we're going to be looking at a lot of that type of stuff this week. Off the tee, it's fine. You don't need the distance. It can help in certain spots, sure, but it's not mandatory because fairways are easy to hit. These are very wide fairways, in relation to other U.S. Opens. But if you're missing the fairway, it's going to cost you very high, or high missed fairway penalty, high rough penalty. If you're off of the fairway, it's going to be a struggle. You better be pretty darn accurate with the tee ball this week. Very difficult to gain strokes on approach. We saw that with how firm the course got throughout the week in 2018. Very difficult to hit greens, difficult around the green, difficult to scramble from rough, everything. Everything about Shinnecock Hills is very, very difficult, with the exception of maybe off the tee. We took a look at some of the strokes gained from 2018. I'm not going to go back to 2004. I know they're technically here. I'm only going to go back to 2018 when looking for Shinnecock Hills. Like, for example, I keep harping on the accuracy part of it. Like, Rory misses the cut. You know, Rory's never going to be negative in distance. And you see how poor he was off the tee. He wasn't hitting any fairways that week. Didn't give himself really a chance. And so he really struggled in 2018. So you don't have to have all the distance in the world. Zach Johnson, top 15. Webb Simpson, top 10. These guys are some of the shortest hitters on the PGA Tour, but they are still performing well at Shinnecock. Kiradech was not a big bomber of the golf ball, if I remember correctly. Paul Casey, this was a great Paul Casey fit. Just ball struck the ever-living daylights out of it. Louis, Hideki when he was right. Like, even Hao Tong Lee played in the 2018 U.S. Open. So that gives you some idea in terms of the guys that were at the top of the leaderboard, and how it really doesn't favor any one particular player so long as that player is hitting their irons extremely well. That's one part of the game that will get exposed, and you will struggle if you are not performing well at that particular skill set. So with all this talk of Shinnecock, and I'll be honest, I wasn't following golf all that much when 2018 U.S. Open happened. Let's go through the course here a little bit, just to get an aerial view. I know we won't get, the elevation changes, which there is quite a bit. You won't get a really great sense of how deep these bunkers are. I'm telling you that they are pretty darn deep, but you see these fairways pretty darn forgiving. Here on hole 1, 58 yards wide in your landing zone. And you're pushing it a little bit there. This is the widest point. It's like 250. But if you wanted to take driver, it would be, 300 right about there. It's only 29 yards. So you don't hit driver probably on this hole. If I measure from tee just to that point, that is 290. Yeah, so it's pretty darn close there with that 300. I'm proud of myself on that one. Anyway, so again, one of these holes that proves this is not just a bomber's fest. This isn't driver all the time. Hole 1, you're stepping up, hitting a fairway metal, maybe even a long iron into this, very forgiving part of the fairway, so that way you can have an actual chance at holding the green there. Hole 2, the behemoth of a par 3, 252. I know it says 254 there, 252 yards on the scorecard. I mean, just a mammoth of a par 3, big bunker guarding the front. I will tell you now, this is a false front, so anything short is going to come rolling down this hill here. Just an extremely difficult hole. The third, your first true long par 4 at 501, at least on the scorecard. I'm telling you, these bunkers aren't in play for the professionals. They are for me, but I'm not very good. These aren't in play for the professionals. Only 217. But again, another one of these wide, forgiving fairways. Gosh dang it! I didn't mean to do that. I wanted to measure. Pretty forgiving fairway, 43 yards wide. But again, if you are off of the fairway even a little bit, this is 4-inch thick rough Probably gets to 5 or 6 if you're extremely offline here. And what you're seeing, at least through the first 3 holes, there's the par 3 second there. The first is there. You're not seeing a lot of trees around Shinnecock. This place is extremely exposed. Again, like a link style course. So any wind that comes through is going to exacerbate a lot of the issues, particularly for players off the tee, because you do have quite a few elevation changes. A lot of times hitting down into valleys. You do have some hitting upwards, especially on par 3s, but for the most part, you're hitting down for these tee balls, and any wind's going to, really, really mess with tee balls, for lack of, better terminology there. But anyway, the long par 3 fourth, or gosh dang it, I always do that. The long par 4 third, again with this massive green that has all these humps and hollows, ridges, steep runoffs. Like this bunker probably sits a good 10 yards under below the surface. Just very difficult to play out of. The fourth, again, one of these holes that you can take driver and push it. I mean, it's 476, but you also get a bunker that pinches in just a little bit, so at 34 yards, whereas you've got maybe just a little bit wider of some room if you hit 3-wood. But again, one of these long par 4s here at Shinnecock to a green that's, once again, if you are off with your irons, you're going to be in some horrendous situations with these bunkers. If you're long, that's going to run down to this fescue back here. You've got to be really on top of your irons this week. Your lone par 5 on the front, the par 5 fifth, pretty nondescript, really. These bunkers shouldn't really be in play for the professionals. This will probably get attacked in 2 at close to 590 yards. The 6th, again, one of these very long par 4s at 495 yards on the scorecard. I don't think this is in play. What's that say? Yeah, only 250. I don't think it's uphill either. So if this is uphill, that might bring it into play, but I don't think it is. But your true one water danger hole, I guess, is this one. I was wrong. I thought it was on the back 9. It's hole 6. And I'm going to tell you now, this green is perched up. So anything short is going to run down. It's going to run down here towards the water. And this fairway cut is so tight, so closely mown, that nothing's going to stop this golf ball. So if a player is woefully short, there's probably a chance they're going to end up in that water. That's how severe it is around Shinnecock. But there's a look at hole 6, 7, straightaway par 3. Just, you got to avoid the bunkers here that sit, quite depressed underneath the green or below the green. 8, straightaway par 4, only 440. One of your shorter par 4s, other than the 2 that are under 400. But again, look how wide the fairway is. This is at this is at 300 yards. 63 yards wide. So if a player isn't hitting the fairway here, they've got real problems. Especially because you can see surrounding this entire fairway, nothing but deep bunkers and thick, long, penalizing fescue. Hole 9, again, 484, 482 on the scorecard. Straightaway, forgiving. Actually, no bunkers in the landing zones, but a pretty challenging green. as these bunkers guard the green pretty well. A very severe slope here. You can actually play it off the hill, bring it down onto the green with a good fortunate kick, if you will. But this is kind of sits at, a little bit of a hollow. Think of Riviera 18 in that regard, a natural amphitheater, if you will. Hole 10, 418. So 2 pretty darn short par 4s to start your day, whether you're starting on the front 9 or the back 9. Again, one of these holes where this is 300 yards, but a player can decide to be a little bit more prudent and maybe hit 3 metal to go to 53 yards wide, as opposed to this pinched in area here that's 40. Again, depends on how comfortable the player's feeling, but a pretty standard looking par 4 there, to a green that, again, it doesn't look great or doesn't look difficult from this satellite view. I'm telling you, they are all very difficult with a bunch of ridges, different like quadrants, if you will. You're gonna have to hit the right area of the green, things of that nature. Maybe not as bad as a Ronimink, but pretty close. One of your shorter par 3s, 157 on the scorecard, and I believe this one actually does play extremely uphill, so it'll play more like a 180, 190 type shot. And hopefully you can see. I'll try to zoom in. It's not it gets a little bit blurry, but hopefully you can see just how severe, how far depressed that bunker is in relation to the green. That is an extremely difficult up and down. If you are in these bunkers, you are quite a bit quite a bit below the surface of the green if you're in these bunkers. 12, long par 4, pretty straight. Avoid the bunkers. No one's getting to the road, not even Bryson. And again, a green that is kind of perched up, if you will. Kind of think of a Volkswagen Beetle type hood, kind of perched up, if you will, and then with all of the hollows and runoffs and all that stuff. 13, the second shortest par 4. Again, one of these holes where you don't necessarily hit driver. This is marking 280, and players probably won't even try to push it that far, just to make sure they are able to hit this fairway in this area. Because if you do hit driver at 300-ish yards, you have 15 yards of room to work with. That's it. So, again, you kind of lay back on a couple of these shorter par 4s. 14, another brute of a par 4, 520 yards. Very wide, forgiving fairway, but the challenge is in the second shot to avoid the bunkers, find the right portion of the green. 15, dogleg right. But again, not very many trees. Not very many trees around here. So any wind is going to really have an exaggerated effect. 16, 614, par 5. It might be a true 3-shotter, depending on how far a player hits it off the tee ball. Completely guard. I mean, you can see, what's this, 12 bunkers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 bunkers guarding this green alone. And a lot of them are, very penalizing to play out of. Not an easy up and down. 17, par 3. And then 18, closing hole, heading back up towards this clubhouse with a massive green there. So there's a look at Shinnecock Hills from a Pro Visualizer standpoint, the 3D view, if you will. You could always go to the PGA website, if you want to actually look at the flyovers of each of these holes, you will see just how severe the undulating greens are. The fairways are quite sloped as well, especially in some areas, some not so much. So just wanted to give you an idea, a visual perspective of Shinnecock, especially since, for somebody who didn't follow golf back in 2018 or didn't follow it to the level I do now, that certainly can help. I'll bring us back to the rabbit hole, but I am going to bring up this this spreadsheet here. The scorecard for the U.S. Open is right here. Pardon me. For the par 3s in red, the 2 par 5s in green. And this is your whole composition chart from Old Fantasy National. A good mix of par 3s. And they're not all necessarily the longest. This 187 could absolutely play above 200. But you got a 157, you got a 176. Those aren't, horribly demanding long iron tee shots. They're demanding, but not necessarily long iron. Now the 252, that could be anywhere from, a hybrid to 3-wood. Maybe even some of the shortest hitters might even hit driver on this, depending on the wind. So a good mix of par 3s here. Can we check top wind players in very difficult conditions? Yes. Let me finish this trip, but good point. We'll take a look at windy players in a couple of different ways. But yeah, we'll absolutely do that. Your par 4s, again, a good mix of par 4s here. You got 2 short par 4s. I don't think they're drivable. We just went through Pro Visualizer. If you disagree with me, then maybe you want to factor in some drivable par 4s into your thoughts. We got 2 very long par 4s at 501, 520. This 495 could absolutely play above 500 with the right tees and pins. So good mix of par 4s here. And I'm telling you, just like it was at the RBC Canadian this past week, par 4 scoring is going to be a major factor because these professionals only have 2 par 5s to work with. So they're going to have to score on some of these par 4s. Hey, good evening, Hanka. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Ricky, you have a future on Ricky. Ludwig is your initial thought today. I don't hate Ludwig, the thought of Ludwig. Yeah, I was very high on him at Aronimink. He played well. The thing is, Hanka, even though this is an extremely long course at, par 70, over 7,400 yards, it doesn't really favor the Bombers. It really doesn't. Now, if Ludwig's going to contend, he's going to have to do well with his long irons, which he's usually pretty good with. But it doesn't favor Bombers. And that's why slightly hesitant on Ludwig. I do like the course fit here. I think he could be okay, but I think I like somebody just a little bit more than Ludwig, at least in terms of initial thoughts. Now, I haven't seen the odds boards. If it might turn out that I wager Ludwig because he's at a better number in my opinion. We'll see. But thanks for jumping into the chat, Hanka. Very much appreciated. So there's a look at the official scorecard yardages, this whole composition chart, which we always used to get in Fantasy National. Now, I would not take this with or take this as gospel, but these are the estimated proximity ranges from what we just went through in Pro Visualizer. Both of these 200 pluses are the par 5s getting attacked in 2. If you disagree, if you think that players are going to be much more prudent and play them as true 3-shot holes, especially the back 9 par 5 that's 615, then you would move one of these, into a shorter range bucket. But what is clear is you're going to have a pretty good set amount of long irons with the amount of long par 4s that we have. 501, 476, 495, 482, 490, 520. A lot of, mid to long iron approaches. And especially with that 250-yard behemoth par 3. So we're going to look at some of the longer proximities, would be my guess. And we'll confirm it tomorrow. But there's a look at the scorecard and the estimated proximities via Pro Visualizer and the official scorecard. So with that, now we'll come over to the rabbit hole and just take our, kind of quick look at some of the players and how they stack up to Tripp's point. We will take a look at some wind performance. And I am going to have to go back to 2025 here, Tripp, to incorporate both of your filters. But first, I just want to look at performance in the wind in general with no other filters. Just how good players are in the wind. So if we do that, and mind you, I'm just going by what the rabbit hole says, which is unfortunately just right underneath, right at the bottom of your screen. You see the light 0 to 9. Moderate is 10 to 17. Windy is 18 plus. That is the defined ranges from the rabbit hole. So, in moderate and windy conditions, going back to the beginning of last year, 2025, the top players in the field are Scotty, Rory, Chris Gotterup, Tommy, Harry Hall, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander, Sepp, who you asked about earlier that is one feather in his cap, if you will, that he's generally played pretty well in the wind. Ludwig, who you mentioned, Hanka, is 9th. Alex Smalley, 10th. JJ Spawn, Hideki, Shane Lowry, Colin, and Kurt Kitayama round out the top 15. Not my top 15, the top 15. Players who aren't good in the wind that are in the field. Trying to list names that will have at least some amount of sample size here. Jackson Suber, who played very well in Canada, in Toronto this week, but he hasn't been good in the wind. Carlos Ortiz, it's very few rounds. Gosh dang it, I didn't mean to click that. Tosti, Nick Hardy, Johnny Kiefer hasn't been great in the wind. Billy Horschel hasn't been great in the wind. Again, you see all the names. I'm just trying to highlight guys who actually have, some name recognition and or have enough rounds. Like Chris Kirk, Sahith Theegala, Cam Smith hasn't been great in the wind. Griot, Grazerman, Nico. So those are the players who haven't been good in the wind. Now, to really narrow this in like you wanted to, Tripp, I'm going to include the difficult because I just always include difficult and very difficult. So you can agree to disagree with me a little bit here. But I always incorporate difficult and very difficult. But in rounds that have been difficult, in moderate and windy conditions, so a little bit narrower of a sample size here, your top performers have been Scotty, Rory, Corey Connors, Tommy, Xander, Keegan really rises in that regard, Shane Lowry, Harris English, Alex Smalley, and Ludwig are your top 10 for what you were asking, Tripp. Who are the best players in heavy winds, moderate and windy conditions, when it's very difficult? So a lot of the same names. You do get some difference here. Like Corey Connors really rises in that regard. Like what are some of these rounds here? Like the Memorial, even though he didn't play well at all. Aronimink, he was really good in round 1 and then kind of tailed off. A lot of Corey Connors' performance is probably from last year, although first 2 rounds at the Players, Connors was excellent and then kind of backed up on the weekend. But yeah, look at the Open last year. Rounds 2, 3, and 4, he was excellent. round 4 of the PGA last year. He was very good. So, yep. There is what you were looking for, Trip. Absolutely. On vacation in South Carolina, I bet France to win the World Cup. I don't hate that bet, although I think they were the favorites, weren't they? It was either them or Spain. So, I don't know how much World Cup, a lot of my viewers are watching. I kind of get into the pageantry of it. America looked really good Friday night. So, anyway, we'll take a look at some other things here. We looked at difficult. We looked at windy. Anything else we want to take a look at in terms of strokes gained total? Yeah. Let's take a look at par 70s. Now, this might seem a little bit odd, and not every par 70 is created equally. I get that. Like, for example, Sony Waialae is a par 70. It's pretty easy. So not all par 70s are made the same. But what I'm wanting to get at here is who are the best players that can still, play well when you don't have a lot of par 5s to take advantage of. Scotty, Tommy, Cam Young, Ben Griffin, Russell Henley, Sam Burns, JJ Spawn, Rory, Harry Hall, and Chris Goddard are your top 10 on par 70s. And again, that might not be the best filter to look at, but I'm just trying to simulate the fact that, guys won't have a lot of par 5s to try to take advantage of this week. They're going to have to do their scoring on par 4s, maybe even a couple of the par 3s. I'm going to expand the time frame even further, go to 2024, and let's take a look at performance in majors. Again, maybe not the best filter to look at, but the guys who have played the best in majors going back to 2024. Scotty, Xander, Rory. Bryson, Rose, Henley. Morikawa, Ludwig, Rahm, and Harris English round out your top 10. Hatton, Reed, Connors, Noren, and Sam Burns, and Chris Goddard round out your top 16. Burns, Goddard tied for 15th. With that, I guess that's probably all I'm going to look at in terms of like strokes gained total. Let's take a look at off the tee. Off the tee, I don't know. Like I said, it's not a big deal to have distance. It can help. It's really about accuracy. So I don't know if I'm going to want to... Yeah, actually, you know what? When you have a high missed fairway penalty, high rough penalty, let's see how many courses and rounds we have here. 2024 is enough. Do we have enough from 2025 and forward? Oh, yeah. You have a few players that have a few rounds, like Hardy and Mitchell, so be aware of that. But, like, if we look at Rory, what are these courses that have high missed fairway penalty and high rough penalty? Memorial, certainly a course we want to look at. Or we would, kind of deem a comparison course. Or at least I would. Maybe Rabbit Hole isn't, but I would, certainly. TPC Sawgrass, a kind of a different type of test than what Shinnecock is, I would think. You get the Travelers, which is the Northeast. U.S. Open. Bay Hill. Okay, like I said, maybe not the best filter combination here, but just in terms of when missing the fairway penalty is high, the rough penalty is high, let's take a look at, let's just look at accuracy, I guess. Rye, Morikawa, Alex Fitzpatrick, Max McGreevy, Putnam, Fleetwood, Ben Coles, okay, Davis Thompson, Laurie Cantor, the most recent professional who made a pretty strong showing in Canada, Ben James, Patrick Reed, Jackson Coyven. Okay. If you want to incorporate a little bit of distance at that, total driving, Nicholas Norgard, DJ, Nick Hardy, Ben James, Sudarshan, who, I was off a little bit last week. I played him a couple times, but, Hanka, you asked about Sudarshan last week, and I was a little bit down on him considering he hadn't played well in a month. And he comes in and shoots finishes top 10 this past week. I know he finished as top Canadian, so, maybe Sudarshan is somebody to think about considering how well he's played in the entirety of 2026. Koivu again, Gary Woodland, Scotty, Sam Stevens, Terrell Hatton, and Ludwig, your top total drivers. Main takeaway here is I know I'm going to be more focused on accuracy as opposed to distance this week. I don't know exactly what metric I want to look at, whether that's just driving accuracy. Maybe I look at good drives. I don't think we're going to necessarily care about distance from edge of fairway, because as soon as you're off the fairway, it's that deep rough. Even if you miss it by a foot or by a mile, you're in the tall fescue. So I don't think distance from edge of fairway type stuff is what we want to look at this week. Let's remove these filters. We'll take a look at approach. Your top approach players, and I will narrow this in quite a bit. Last 24 rounds, Scotty, Spawn, Adam Scott, Ludwig, Alex Fitzpatrick, Tom Kim, Matt Fitzpatrick, Cantlay, Wyndham Clark, Morikawa, your top iron players. Brooks, Rye, Suber, Hatton, Gerard, rounding out the top 15. Trying to check and see, and I understand Tripp, it's a very small sample size since he's on live, but Bryson just hasn't been good this year. Two really poor tournaments, and I worry about his irons around here. He was okay at the PGA. He will definitely have to be better around the green. He doesn't get enough credit for how good of a putter he is. His irons are just going to have to be better this week, and I just don't know if they're going to be. I'm quite concerned about that, Tripp. But there's your top iron players coming in, or at least top players with iron form. We'll look at around the green. AGDC, Matt Fitz, McNeely, Cantlay, Putnam, J-Day, Siwoo, Scotty, Ben Griffin, Cam Smith. Your top around the green players. If I had to guess, we'd probably do short grass scrambling, because they keep the areas around the green. If it's not bunker, they keep it really, really tight, so that way you get these, dramatic long runoffs, these false fronts and steep runoffs that'll take the ball, sometimes upwards of 20, 25 yards from the green. So my guess would be short grass scrambling, proximity short grass, maybe. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more of an understanding tomorrow for that. With the amount of bunkers, you could always argue sand saves as well. Okay. Let's not ignore putting. We'll go back to 2024. Agree on Bryson conserves but feel his odds reflect that. Historically under 20 at USGA subs. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, whenever, even though I was low on him at the Masters, he was my fade at the Masters. I think I faded him at the PGA as well, or listed him as my fade. The U.S. Open is generally his best major, and you see that by the fact that he has, 2 U.S. Opens? I know he has at least one. So I get it. U.S. Opens are generally his best fit. I'm just concerned about his form coming in. That's all. All right. Let's go Benton Poa. And let's just go ahead and say fast. I'm pretty sure they're going to want to bake this place out. Oh, look at that. You only have one fast tournament that was Benton Poa. So if I had a perfect world, I would use the fast speed filter here. But we're just going to use the Benton Poa filter and all speeds. Burns, McCarty, Silverman, J-Day, Brandon Wu, Jackson Suber, Grazeman, Harry Hall, Putnam, and Chandler Phillips are your top putters on Benton Poa, which is what we'll see at Shinnecock this week. With that, I think that's going to be it for an initial research. We'll obviously cover a whole lot tomorrow night in the Data Dive show. We'll be on site Wednesday. Very interested to see players' strategy off the tee. Exactly. Like I said, we went through Pro Visualizer. I'd be interested to see, especially like hole 1 here. I doubt many players hit driver here. Some of the shorter par 4s. I'd be interested to see how aggressive these players are getting. So I'm hopefully you'll be able to jump into chat, Trip, Wednesday night. Give us a little bit of a rundown in that regard. But thanks to Moss, Trip, Pre, and Hanka for jumping into chat. Very much appreciated. Look, I hate self-promo. I really do. But if you like the way that I talk about golf and go into the statistics, if you liked looking at Shinnecock from, an aerial view, a satellite view, I ask that you like the video. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. It really does help me out. As I go through all this, I love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, what he went to school for, trying to find unique, the best options in terms of wagers, best options for DFS, maybe try to find some diamonds in the rough, if you will. So like I said, I hate the self-promo, but if you really did enjoy the content, I ask that you like the video, like the show, subscribe if you feel so inclined. Really does help me out. Thanks to you all for jumping to chat. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. I love what I do. Like I said, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Hasn't been a great month for me personally in that regard. So we're going to try and hope and turn it around for the U.S. Open on Long Island this week. So stay tuned. Make sure you set your reminders for the Data Dive show tomorrow. So for all the wagers you made this past week at the RBC Canadian, for all of the DFS contests you played this past week at the RBC Canadian, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.